Hello everyone. Welcome back to our history lesson 3 in the earliest cities, part 4. So let's recap. In the earlier sessions, we have seen about the story of Harappa, how were the cities excavated, who were the people associated in the excavations, specifically the Indian archaeologists, what was special about these cities. So we studied about the upper town or the citadel, which was the western part, where important buildings like granaries, assembly hall, great bath of Mohenjo-daro, the fire altars at Kalibangan and Lothal were constructed, and rich people generally resided in the citadel area. Then we discussed about the lower town, which is in the eastern part. It was a place of residence for the common people. Later, we also focused on the architecture, in that we studied about the houses, where they were generally two-storied houses, drains which were covered and maintained properly, and also about the streets. Then we studied how the life in cities were busy, how the people were engaged into different art and handicraft production. There were certain people who were known as specialists because they used to focus only on a one kind of work. Then we saw a new thing, that is faience, which was used to make beads or different kinds of ornaments. And then how people went from place to place in search of raw material, wherein they went in different parts of India and of the subcontinent to get precious stones, precious metals, etc. Then we also saw that there was a cotton cloth which was found, which tells us about the history of cloth. Then life in villages, wherein we saw the occupations that the people in this Harappan civilization followed, where the people practiced agriculture on a large scale, and certain occupations like rearing of animals, hunting and gathering was also practiced. Then we had a closer look at the two towns of Gujarat, that is Dholavira and Lothal. Dholavira being located in the Khadir Belt in Rann of Kutch, and Lothal on the tributaries of Sabarmati. And then finally, we discussed about what are seals and sealings and their importance. So now let's discuss the reasons for the decline of the Harappan civilization. So the end of this civilization began about 3900 years ago when the people started moving out from Harappa and other places. They stopped using their seals, weights, writings, and even raw materials. Their buildings were fell apart because they were not repaired, drainage systems to be found in the broken condition. And then new houses were built up by new people almost 1400 years later. So it's also said that the people who were known as the Aryans, they must have invaded this particular civilization or this particular cities. And so there was a construction of new houses and a new setup was constructed over there. One more reason which is believed that the rulers might have lost control over the people, and other reasons like deforestation, as the wood was used up for fuel, maybe for smelting the metal ores or for baking the bricks. Excessive of grazing, the pasture lands got over. Floods, yes. For example, now it's also said that these cities were constructed 7 times because they were destroyed by the floods of river Indus. But if the civilization was so strong that the people could stand up even after 7 times hit by flood, how can flood destroy this particular civilization? So yet there is a question mark for the people that how this civilization came to an end. It's also said that maybe some of the unknown metal or a radioactive metal must have hit the ground in that area. As it said so because there are certain kinds of skeletons found at the burial sites which are not yet decayed even after almost 4,500 years. So they are intact, and some deposition of a kind of radioactive material is been found on those skeletons. Maybe it was rivers dried up is one of the reasons, and then some natural disaster which destroyed the civilization, because even few skeletons were found wherein the people were holding their hands. That means they may be trying to escape from those places. So yet our archaeologists are having a tough time, or you can say they are still struggling to find out what was the reason of the collapse for such a wonderful and planned civilization. So let's hope that our archaeologists get success in finding out about how this civilization came to an end. Now let us just see to the important dates. It's not actually dates, some kind of time period which is important for us to know. So, about 7,000 years ago, Mehergar people were known, or they knew the cultivation of cotton crop. So, we believe that our human civilization is not too old, but this is a proof, or this cotton cultivation of about 7,000 years ago in Mehergar tells us that human settlements are much more old than 4,700 years ago, which we studied earlier. And then, yes, the first planned cities came up round about 4,700 years ago, and they were constructed, or settlements started on the banks of river Indus and its tributaries. And the best example that we studied was the Indus Valley civilization, wherein we studied for Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and the different towns of Gujarat. Then, about 3,900 years ago, these earliest cities started coming to an end. This civilization started declining. And yes, few reasons we have discussed earlier, but not an exact reason found by our archaeologists. They are still working for that. And then about 2,500 years ago, there is emergence of new cities on the river banks of different rivers like Ganga, where we studied about Magad, an important settlement near river Ganga. And there are many more to pen down. I hope all these things are clear in your mind. If you have any doubts, you can clear it when we meet for our session. Now, a last part I would like to just tell you is about elsewhere. Yes, elsewhere. In elsewhere, we are just going to see about Egypt pyramids. We all know that during, say, about 5,000 years ago, when people in our subcontinent were dealing with such beautiful architectures and constructions, what was going on in the other part of the world? So, an example of Egypt is also quoted here. So it says that Egypt, a dry desert which extends its land along the river Nile, still it's said to be a desert. Around 5,000 years ago, kings ruled over Egypt, and these kings sent armies to distant lands to get precious stones, precious metals, ivory, or timber. They also built huge tombs known as pyramids. When they died, the bodies of the kings were preserved and buried in the pyramids. These carefully preserved bodies are known as mummies. Yes, the afterlife was incredibly important for the Egyptians. They believed that by preserving a dead person's body, which they did through the process of mummification, a large number of objects were also buried with them. Their soul would live on in the afterlife forever. So as discussed about Mehergar in the earlier chapter, that people believed even of life after death. So they buried animals, beads, utensils along with the people. Same was done in Egypt. The bandages of ancient mummies were unwrapped and they could stretch for about 1.6 kilometers. So we all know the mummification process, some kind of chemical applied and then it is wrapped with a white bandage and then the bodies were preserved. Cats were considered to be a sacred animal by the ancient Egyptians. It's thought that most families kept a cat as a pet, which they believed would bring good luck to their household. So this is one more fact about the ancient Egypt. And then we all know about the pyramids as well. So this is all from my side about our lesson 3 in the earliest cities. I hope you all are clear with all the things that we have discussed. If not, surely we will discuss it in our sessions. Till then, bye. Take care of yourselves. Stay healthy. Stay inside.